Howdy y'all, my name's Patrick, and today we are going to be going through one of my favorite decks ever in Vanguard Zero. And this is actually going to be my first deck profile, so if you have any feedback, let me know. But aside from that, let's dive right in. Today, we are going to be talking about Maguses. I don't know if it's Magi or whatever the proper plural is, but we are going to be walking through this Magus deck. Maguses have been underrated, I feel. They are very fun, they generate a lot of advantage, and I think they are actually one of OTT's strongest archetypes to choose from. That being said, there are a lot of archetypes to choose from, but Maguses are definitely one of the more flavorful ones, so it feels very fun. For anybody who doesn't know, the Magus archetype focuses on predicting the top card of your deck in order to gain bonuses. And by using these effects, you can generate a lot of card advantage. And basically what this can do is this can help you just play down a ton of units and keep attacking, keep swinging with a full board, while still having a full hand, and eventually chip your opponent down to 5 damage. Then once your opponent's at 5 damage, you can close the game with the new Susanoo Stride, along with Silent Tom, who's our favorite Sentinel Restrict card. Now, with that playstyle in mind, let's actually check out the cards individually. We'll begin with the new starter. So this is Semilunar Magus. Her effect is when she boosts, if your Vanguard is a Magus, which they all are, you can put her into the soul, then guess the top card of your deck. If you guess it correctly, you get to draw 2 cards. Now, it's important to note that this Semilunar Magus is not the same as she was in the TCG. In the physical card game, her effect used to be that you could check the top card without sacrificing her. So every time she'd boost, she would check the top card, and you'd only put the card into your soul if you guessed it correctly and actually wanted to draw the card. But in Vanguard Zero, they nerfed her a bit so that now you have to put her into the soul to even attempt guessing the top card of your deck. And if you get it wrong, you lose her without any bonuses at all. So be careful with using her. If anybody used her in the physical TCG, she's not the same. Get used to this new effect. But otherwise, she is excellent because once you do know what the top card of your deck is, which a lot of our cards allow you to do so, you get to sacrifice her to draw 2 cards, which is really good card advantage. Now, aside from that, we can dive into the grade 1s now. So, first off, we have Crescent Magus. We play 4 copies of her. She is incredible. So, she's 6,000 power. However, when you boost with her, you can guess the top card of your deck, and if you guess it correctly, you gain 3,000 power. It allows you to set up all of your other Magus cards, which require you to guess the top card of your deck correctly. So she basically makes it so that every single battle phase, you always know what's on the top of your deck, so you can capitalize on all of these draw bonuses. It's great. She's great. Love her. You always want to play 4 of her. No questions asked. Now, an important thing about her and Semilunar Magus actually is that they don't need to boost the Vanguard to work. So both of these effects work when boosting rear guards, which makes them really good because you can make whatever fields you want and still get benefits from them. Next card, we play 4 perfect guards that countercharge. They're good. There's no reason to play the other perfect guards, so we're playing the countercharger because who doesn't love a free bonus? Then we play 3 stride fodders because striding is important in this deck, and then we run 2 of the new Cone Magus. So her effect is when you play her, if you have a Magus Vanguard, which again you always will, guess the top card of your deck, and if you guess it correctly, you countercharge 2 for free. That's it. Just straight up countercharge. You don't need to discard a card. You don't need to counterblast a card to gamble. You don't need to sacrifice anybody. She straight up gives you a free countercharge if you know what the top card of your deck is, which is excellent. But more importantly, the good thing about her is, even if you don't know what the top card of your deck is, she can be used to learn what the top card of your deck is during your main phase, so that all of your other Magus cards will be able to trigger correctly as needed. So yeah, with Cone Magus out of the way, that wraps up our grade 1s. Now let's dive into our grade 2s. We play 3 Silent Toms, who is the wonderful, unblockable card who could only be blocked with Heal Guardians. That being said, he is just an 8k, and he is only used as a finisher, so you want to stick with 3, because he's important enough to show up, but not like playing 4 copies level important. Then we have Briolette Magus, very important card. We run 4 of her. Her effect is, during the main phase, you can Soul Blast a card, to draw a card and then put her to the top of your deck. So she basically trades herself with the top card. And even though it costs a Soul Blast, none of the other effects use Soul Blast in this deck. So you can kind of use her as much as you want. By using her, you can basically guarantee all of your Magus effects to go off that turn. So she's excellent. Good stuff. Then we have 4 Stellar Maguses. She is incredible. She is brilliant. First off, one of the reasons she's brilliant is because she works on the Vanguard circle. Now, let's take a look at what she does. Her effect is when she attacks anything, if she attacks anything, you can counterblast 1 and guess the top card of your deck. If you get it correct, you get to add that card to your hand, so you get to draw a card. And if you get it wrong, you get to countercharge 1. Meaning that even if you get the card wrong, you don't get punished for it. You just unflip your counterblast and it's as if nothing ever happened. And more importantly, that means that Stellar Magus can be used to figure out the top card of your deck for free before using another Magus' effect. But overall, Stellar Magus is great because she gives you hand advantage without being punished, and she can set up other Magus effects to work. Now, the last card we have here is a new one from the clan event, Rhombus Magus. When she attacks a Vanguard, if you have a Magus Vanguard, which you always do, guess the top card of your deck. If you do, she gains 5,000 power. This buff's really good because this means she can hit literally anything unboosted, but it is important to note that it only works 1 on the rearguard circle and 2 when she attacks a Vanguard. So keep that in mind. Now we can move on to our grade 3s and triggers. So obviously we run 4 Heal Guardians because we don't want to die. Then we run 4 Pentagonal Magus. Now this is the card you actually want to ride as your main Vanguard. Her effect is a limit break, but it's really good, I promise. So when she attacks a Vanguard, you can guess the top card of your deck. And if you guess it correctly, you add the card to your hand for free and you gain 5,000 power and a critical. Now, I'll be real here, you don't actually use her effect a lot because you want to stride most of the time, but in the rare occasion where you either can't stride or if you're severely behind on damage and want to catch up, Pentagonal Magus is a great way to still apply pressure to your opponent and still generate card advantage for free. This ability doesn't require any counterblasts. Like straight up, it's a free effect. So excellent. There's also a counterblast thing. Don't do that. Don't use 2 counterblasts for her. Not worth it. Then we play 1 Floral Magus. So Floral Magus' effect is a limit break as well, and it costs 1 counterblast. But hear me out, she's really good. So you can counterblast 1 during your main phase, guess the top card of your deck. If you guessed it correctly, you get to add that card to your hand and gain 5,000 power. Now, the important thing to note is that she is not limited to once per turn. You can draw 5 cards in 1 turn if you really wanted to with her. And that makes her wonderful. That being said, Pentagonal is still the more reliable card to ride, but if you're in a pinch and need to draw a few cards, Floral Magus can help you out. And you may be wondering, oh, but I need to guess the top card correctly, right? How am I gonna know that? You can use Briolette Magus every single time to get the top card correct. So let's say you have Floral Magus there, and you have Briolette Magus as your rear guard. Soul Blast 1, add Briolette to the top card of your deck. Then you can Counterblast 1, add Briolette to hand. Rinse and repeat until you're out of soul. So it's a very useful interaction if you need to recover hand. It's gonna be a very rare situation for you to actually need to do this, but that being said, know that the option is there. Now we can move on to our last grade 3, Ring Magus, who is from the recent clan event. When she attacks a Vanguard, if you have a Magus Vanguard, you can Counterblast 1, guess the top card of your deck, and if you guess it correctly, you add it to your hand and gain 3,000 power. Now, please note, just like Rhombus Magus, she only works when attacking a Vanguard, but she works both on the Vanguard circle and the rearguard circle. So if you have to ride Ring Magus, her effect can still work. It's good stuff, and the power buff's really handy too. If your opponent's at grade 2, you can use Ring Magus' effect to still get over the defensive trigger by attacking for 14,000 power. That being said, there is one drawback. She is not like Stellar Magus. She does not countercharge if you fail. So if you're going to be counterblasting with her, you need to be absolutely sure, or at least pretty certain, that you're going to guess the card correctly. Otherwise, you will have counterblasted for no reason. Stellar Magus does not struggle with this. Ring Magus does, so keep that in mind. That being said, one of her action fun bonuses is that Ring Magus is not GB restricted, meaning that you don't need to stride for her effect to work. Right on your immediate first grade 3 ride, you can start drawing cards with her. She's excellent, amazing, incredible. That's why we run 4 of her. Now we can move on to our strides. So, We run one Harmonics Messiah so that we don't die in the Link Joker matchup. We run one Carrot. His effect is when he hits a Vanguard, check the top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 to hand, add 1 to bottom. He is one of your ideal first strides to use. Then we have 2 Takamikazuchis. His effect is GB2, so you need to have Stridden at least once before using him. You can counterblast 2 cards, and if you do, G Persona Blast as well, and check the top 4 cards of your deck, and add 2 of them to hand, the other 2 go to bottom. So it's essentially counterblast 2, draw 2, really good for card advantage, a very solid second stride. Then we run 9-Headed Dragon King as like an extra tech card as a backup. His effect is, at the end of the battle, this unit attack the Vanguard, counterblast 1, put up to 3 cards from your hand to your deck, and then draw a card for each card returned. I rarely use this card, but he's there just in the very, very rare case where I have a super sucky hand and I need to fix it. Do note that his ability does not generate you any new cards. He doesn't draw an extra card, it's straight up just cycle through your hand. So he is not a preferred stride, but he is there for emergencies. Then we can dive into the new cards from the clan event. So here we have Globe Magus. She is an excellent choice for a first stride if you don't want to go into Kieran. So her effect is, when your unit is placed or at the start of your attack phase, you can look at the top card of your deck and put it back to the top. So basically, you always get to know what the top card of your deck is. So when you play Code Magus and need to guess the top card of your deck to countercharge to, you can look at the top card with Globe Magus first, and then you can immediately get the effect correctly. When you're about to attack with a Stellar Magus, you can check the top card of your deck first, and then counterblast 1 to draw a card. Now, do note that the timing is different than the physical TCG version of Globe Magus. The original Globe Magus allowed you to check the top card of your deck after every drive check as well, but Vanguard Zero does not let you do that. It only works at the start of your attack phase or whenever you play a unit, including herself. Another side note is that it's at the start of the attack phase, not when you attack, meaning that you don't have to choose what unit to attack with yet until you check the top card of your deck. So maybe you check the top card of your deck and you realize, oh, it's a trigger. You can change the order of your attacks accordingly. She is very solid, but do note that her effect by itself does not draw you any cards. So only use Globe Magus if you can actually benefit from using it. You need to have cards which actually require you to know the top card of your deck for Globe Magus to serve any use to you. Otherwise, she does not draw you any cards, she does nothing. Then we can move on to our last stride here, 2 Kamususanoos from the new clan event. His ability is, when he's placed, G Persona Blast and gain 2 new abilities. First one, when he hits a Vanguard, check the top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 to hand, add 1 to bottom. So basically, it replicates Kieran's effect. Its second effect is why we care about it though. GB3, all of your units gain 2000 power, meaning all of your columns gain 4000 power. And this is really, really good because it can make your calls hit numbers. It can make Silent Toms actually unblockable. So Kamususanoo is ideally your final stride of the game. Flip himself in the G zone and murder them with Tom. Now, let's take a quick look at our triggers again. So you'll notice that this deck uses 9 stands and 4 heals with absolutely no draws. The reason for this is quite simple. You draw a ton of cards already. You do not need draw triggers. You do not need to draw more cards. I promise you that that is not necessary, alright? You are solid without drawing any more cards. Now, you also don't want to run crits because you want to be able to control the amount of damage your opponent has. Meaning, you want to aim for exactly 5 damage so that you can finish things off with Tom. If you were to use crits, you could end up with awkward situations like attacking your opponent at 4 and then accidentally forcing a perfect guard out of their hand with the crit. You don't want that. You want to be able to gradually build your opponent up to 5 damage so that you can finish the game correctly with Tom. Not only that, but the stand triggers work effectively with all of the when discard attack abilities, meaning that you can check the top card of your deck again with Globe Magus, you can draw another card with Stellar Magus's attack, you can just do a bunch of stuff really with the extra attack. So stands are very much preferred in this deck. So in regards to mulligans, I only have 2 main pieces of advice really. One, keep Stellar Magus in your hand. If you come across Stellar Magus, you want to keep her. You want to ride her. She is excellent. She is amazing. She is your main source of card advantage. You want to keep her. And if you come into Tom, only keep him if you have literally no other grade 2s in your hand. Otherwise, toss them out of your hand and draw new cards. Because with the amount of drawing you do with this deck, you will eventually run into Silent Tom again. Do not worry about that. Now with this deck, there are a few options for substitutes. For the starter, Lozenge Magus was the old card you used to run for this deck. And realistically, it's not such a bad idea to swap Semilunar out for Lozenge Magus if you prefer Lozenge Magus. That being said, the extra draw from Semilunar Magus is still really good, so I highly recommend trying her out. Now for the grade 1s, one option is to drop down one copy of the Stride Fodder and run 3 copies of Cone Magus instead. You can do this if you feel like you're using too much Counterblast and need the extra counter charge, or if you feel like you don't have enough effects to figure out the top card of your deck. Now, currently, I feel like 2 Cone Maguses and 3 Stride Fodder is a comfortable number just because you love the Stride and other cards check the top card for you already. But if you do feel like you need more top checkers, you can add an extra Cone Magus in. Now for the grade 3s, one option you have is swapping the Floral Magus out for Flip Crooney. Let me pull him up so y'all know what he does. So this is Flip Crooney. His effect is when his attack hits a Vanguard, either on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, if you're at GB1, you can check the top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 to hand, add 1 to bottom. It's a free card. You don't need a Counterblast for this. Sure, it requires Oracle, but Magus is draw enough for Flip Crooney's effect to actually work. So if you find yourself not using Floral Magus at all and want an extra rearguard option, Flip Crooney does work as a solid alternative. Now, as for the strides, I know some people may not have full copies of both GRs, so if you need to swap either Takanikazuchi out or the Kamususanoo out, you can replace them with either more Kirins or more Globe Maguses. I highly recommend just swapping out 1 for 1. So if you're taking out 2 Takamikazuchis, add 1 Globe Magus, add 1 Kirin to balance it out. And another option for your strides is if you really like Globe Magus's effect and absolutely detest 9-headed Dragon King, you can run 2 Globe Maguses instead of 1. So if you want to, drop a 9-headed Dragon King, play Globe Magus instead. And that wraps up the cards in the deck. Now, the next thing I want to do is kind of go through a few very important notes to remember or important interactions regarding this deck. First off, please, while playing this deck, remember that you have a maximum hand limit of 9 cards. You are going to draw a lot of cards in this deck. The nice thing is, though, you won't be thrown off guard by an accidental draw trigger because you're running 9 stands in this deck. So you will always know how many cards you'll have by the end of your turn. Just never end your turn with 9 cards in your hand unless you know you're going to be dropping one of them to guard an attack. So you don't want to waste any cards, really, is the main moral of that story. Now, another very important thing to note is that some of these effects are mandatory, specifically Cone Magus for the top check, Crescent Magus for the boost effect, and Rhombus Magus for the boost effect. So just keep that in mind when doing your attacks. Otherwise, you'll end up in an awkward situation where you reveal a card to your opponent when you really don't need to, and your opponent will be able to play around your damage trigger. So just be very careful with what you use to boost and what you use to reveal and whatnot. Otherwise, you may reveal information to your opponent for no reason. Aside from that, even though Crescent Magus's effect is mandatory, she is excellent in combination with all of your other cards. Rhombus Magus requires you to check the top card on attack, so you can use Crescent Magus to guarantee that he gained 5,000 power. Stellar Magus needs you to check the top card of your deck to draw it, but you can use Crescent Magus's effect first to guarantee that you can draw the card. Same thing with Ring Magus and Pentagonal Magus. Now, that being said, in the worst case scenario where you don't have a Crescent Magus on your board, you can still use Cone Magus to get the top card of your deck. You can still use Briolette Magus to fix the top card of your deck, or you can obviously use Globe Magus to always know what the top card of your deck is. So Crescent Magus is your preferred option for a lot of these effects, but if you don't have her, you still have other options, which is really good. Now, another fun interaction with Crescent Magus, and most of the Magus' cards really, is that if you have an on attack effect and an on boost effect, they happen simultaneously, so you can choose what order to do them in. Meaning that if you want, you can fail to call one of the effects correctly just to guarantee that the second effect works. So one example is if you're attacking with a Stellar Magus boosted with a Crescent Magus, but your opponent's at 60,000 power. Normally, these two cards will only add up to 15. However, what you can do is you can make Stellar Magus' effect resolve first and purposely choose a card which is definitely not on the top of your deck. And then, now that Stellar Magus has revealed the top card, you can use Crescent Magus to buff the column and make it hit for 18,000 power instead of just 15. So just keep track of the interaction, because in certain situations, you will want to prioritize Crescent Magus' buff instead of any of the other effects to make sure that it hits a column. Another useful interaction for this is using Semilunar Magus, actually. So one of my favorite things to do is ride Stellar Magus and have Semilunar Magus in the back row to boost the Vanguard. And when you do that, both of their effects will trigger at the same time, and you can choose whether to use Stellar Magus' effect first or Semilunar Magus' effect first. And what you want to do is use Stellar Magus first and purposefully get the card wrong. Choose a card which has a very, very low chance of you drawing into it, because you want to make sure that you know what the top card is. After you know what the top card is with Stellar Magus' effect, then you can use Semilunar to put yourself into the soul and correctly add it to your hand and draw an extra card in the process as well. So that's an example of how you can use the on attack effect first before using the on boost effect. Now, I have another extra important note, and it's regarding to what to declare, because there will be situations when you will not know what the top card of your deck is. And if you're ever in that situation, you'll want to choose a card that meets at least one of these two criteria. You either want a card that is going to be extremely useful to you if you happen to be lucky and draw it, like a perfect guard, or you choose a card which maybe like whatever, but has a high chance of being on the top. When you check the cards in your deck, it tells you how many cards are left in your deck, so you can choose a card which has a high likelihood of being on the top for the effect to work. So if you're using Crescent Magus, for example, and you need to get the buff, but you're not sure what's on the top, look through the cards in your deck and see what has the highest chance of being there, the most amount of copies left in the deck. And that will significantly improve your chances of getting those effects to work. Now here's another extra pro tip. To help improve your chances of getting those guesses correct, pay attention to your drive checks and pay attention to the cards that go to the bottom of your deck from effects like Kirin or Takamikazuchi, because eventually in the late game, you'll reach the bottom like 5 or 6 cards in your deck, and you will be able to know every single card in order, because all of those cards will be cards that you've drove checked during that game or put to the bottom with your stride effects. And if you do that, you won't need to waste soul for Briolette's effect, you won't need to waste any top check effects, you'll be able to get them right every single time. And this is very, very useful for closing out the game with Silent Tom and Crescent Magus, because you'll always make Crescent Magus a 9,000 power booster, and that is very, very useful in the late game. Now, speaking of ending off the game and late game in general, again, your win condition is using the Susanoo plus 2000 buff along with Silent Tom to make unblockable columns, because Silent Tom plus Crescent Magus is 14,000 power, plus 3,000 for Crescent Magus' effect, that's 17,000 power. Then if you use Susanoo's buff, that's an extra 2,000 each, meaning that it goes from 17,000 power in the column to 21,000 power. And this means that was just one trigger, Silent Tom can force 2 heals out of your opponent's hand in order to guard it. Or, the more likely situation, they will literally be unable to guard your Silent Tom. That's a 26,000k column, and you'll be able to win the game right then and there. So that is how you can win. Now, with that in mind, it is still possible that your opponent has 2 heal guards in hand. So, in order to help improve the odds of you winning with that Silent Tom turn, you want to be able to reduce the number of heal guards in your opponent's hand during the mid to late game, which means that you want to avoid using your opponent's sentinels. You want to be able to attack with the lowest amount of attack possible that still damages your opponent, so that they have to drop a heal guard instead of a sentinel. That way, if you keep attacking with things like 60,000 power while they're at 11, they'll drop the heal guardian instead of the sentinel, and you'll have a way easier time killing them with Tom once you reach the extra late game. So again, just to recap, bait out the heals early and then kill them with Tom. And that wraps up the deck profile. Again, this is a super fun deck, so I highly recommend y'all to try it out because it's just such a unique experience. And if you have any questions about the deck or any ideas for future videos, make sure to let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel as well. I also stream on Twitch, so if you want to say hi, make sure to drop by. I play Vanguard 0 every week and always love having new people drop in. But that's it for me. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see y'all again next time. Peace out, y'all.